Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of A Crystal Clear Mind. It's so beautiful to have you here with us today. Wherever you are in the world, I want to thank you for joining us. And today I am blessed to have Victoria Smith-Gillard on with me. Now, Victoria is a people and pet therapist, but she is so much more than that, as most of my guests are. So I'm going to hand it over to the fabulous Victoria to tell you guys absolutely everything all about herself, because she can explain it so much better than I can. Good morning.
Good morning, Bex. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh,
I
thank you for
really
coming.
appreciate it. Well, I hope what we share today inspires people, allows them to understand their pets better, understand themselves better. There's so much that we can learn from our pets.
Oh, yeah,
And I suppose
absolutely.
and I guess it's a good time at that point to kind of go, well, who am I? Why am I talking about pets? So I'm a people and pet therapist. I'm a medium and healer, and I work with two sides of the equation as such. So I do work with living pets, and I do work with pets in spirit as well. So pets that have passed away. So I help heal emotional and behavioural issues with pet and the owner to create a more harmonious and happier household. Oh, that's a lot of H's. Um, but I also work with pets in spirit, very much so in terms of obviously somebody that is struggling with the loss of obviously their beloved pet. We help them to, start healing wounds, releasing emotions, reconnecting with their pet energetically. I communicate with pets in spirit, so I'm a pet medium, as I like to call myself, as well. And that can bring a lot of reassurance, a lot of comfort, a lot of healing. And again, there still are many things that we can learn from our pets being in spirit, as well. So we can work with so many things, whether they have passed or whether they are obviously living pets as well. So yeah, that's a summary version of me.
Which is fabulous because, I mean, as I was speaking with you earlier, and we've spoken quite a few times, but after having Dr. Isla Fishburne on, we've kind of had that lovely um, universal to source connection all the way out here. And I love that what you're talking about is bringing it more here, but in such a similar way, but also in such different ways. And I absolutely love that. I love that, most people, I can't actually speak, I haven't got one, but most people do have a pet, don't they? One, multiple pets. And we've had some fascinating discussions, you and I, haven't we, about how they're very reflective, the owners, and so on and so forth. It sounds fascinating. How did you work out that you were a pet medium? Where did that start from?
So it wasn't really a working out. It was more of I wanted to be it. So for me, what happened was my cat Phoebe passed in 2016, and I'd had her since I could fit her in the palm of my hand. My brother is one of his roles is a veterinary nurse, and he had to hand rear her as part of his vet nurse course, and he had nobody to give her to. Obviously the hand rearing was done, and he said, would you like a cat? And of course I was at that stage like, absolutely, of course I'd love a cat. So I had a real privilege and honour to be in some respects just part of that hand rearing, bottle feeding and, stimulating her to go to the toilet and all of those things. And so I took her on. So I'd had her a very long time. I got her in, I think it was 98. So that's a long time, and a very special bond. She was what I would class part feral. That can sometimes, she was found outside the Harmsworth Hospital in London under a lorry. So she was part feral. Um, and she definitely had traits of like chasing you down the hallway on hind legs and, literally kind of trying to sink her teeth into your jugular. And I had to do very different things to what most cat behaviourists or veterinary professionals would tell you to do to stop her. So, for instance, I was always told, you go, no. And you point your finger and you go, no, with a firm voice, and she would literally just stare at my finger, flatten her ears, and literally fly at you. And even if I put my hand around my back, she would run round behind my back. And I was like, wow, okay, so none of the normal stuff worked. So I did have to adapt things like super nanny techniques, like the 3 strikes and you're off my lap. And, actually you need to come back and apologize. And when you do, then we're all fine. And all of those random things, I've had to get down on all fours, with her and sort of pretty much put my head down so I didn't get my eyes slashed. And just to kind of go, really, so she was quite feisty. But if we think about the mirrors and messengers, I was also quite feisty at that point in time. I'd been through a lot of trauma even at that point in my life. So I was probably very feisty as well. So she was still also reflecting me and probably how I was feeling. She wasn't aggressive. I always said that to people. She wasn't aggressive. She was defensive. Anyway, we are slightly digressing there. But, and when I lost her in 2016, I was just so bereft because I'd had such a strong bond with her, that if I could have blown all 4 walls out of my flat, I would have done. And I had already sort of developed being a medium at that point anyway. And I'd seen some mediums, sort of occasionally sort of say, oh, I've got a horse here with me. I don't know if you can understand a horse, and they're saying this. And I just thought, well, if they can do it, surely I can do it. And because I'd worked in the vet industry, in the vet referral industry, I thought, well, I do know quite a lot of the breeds, especially with obviously dogs and cats, not quite as much with horses. But so I thought I would probably then be able to say, well, I've got a poodle here, or I've got, a boxer dog or a dogue de Bordeaux. And that makes a big difference when you're describing that to people,
Yeah,
rather
definitely.
rather than just saying I've got a medium-sized dog. I mean, that could be anyone's or anything. So I actually worked with an animal communication mentor, Joanne Yo, and actually said to her, this is what I want to do. I want to train in this because I was so bereft. All I wanted was for somebody to say, yes, I've got your cat. She's tabby and white. She's here with you. And, sort of saying that to me, that she's still here. So I taught myself to do it, which is quite like me anyway. I am very much like, if somebody says it can't be done, you've got to go, right, well, I'll research and see how we can. So yeah, basically that's kind of how it developed, really, was my own bereavement and the stress, and the intensity of feelings around missing that connection, that I taught myself to do it. And it's been delightful is the wrong word. It's been a privilege, and it's also shown me a lot, and it's taught me a lot when pets have shared things with me. I've had it where one case study that I was working with, she couldn't decide which pet to give me a photo of, and she's like, oh God, I've got 3 and I don't know which one to give you. And in the communication, all 3 came through, but she hadn't told me that she was struggling to decide which one at the time. So she'd just given me the photo and said, this is the one. And of course, then at the end, she said, actually, you've brought all 3 of them through, not just the one. And she said, and then she sort of told me what she'd said. So that's kind of how it all came about, really, was just my own experience and just going, I want to try and help people because, yes, mediums normally work with human loved ones, but actually us own pets, where they are our extended family, they're our babies, often kind of the substitute for children. It's like, it's just as, or sometimes even worse, the grief and the intensity of that loss and that bereavement. So yeah, that's a long answer to a short question.
Yeah, I love that she sort of had that reflective nature in her that could potentially have been very similar to yourself, which I believe is something that you kind of experience quite a lot, isn't it? This sort of mirror image behavior.
Yeah, so I always say pets are our mirrors and our messengers, because sometimes, I mean, they are definitely mirrors, so they have a heart-to-heart connection with us. So Rupert Sheldrake, he's a scientist, he talks about this all the time. He calls it morphic resonance. I call it the group bond because it's just easier to understand for me, that we all have this, this energy within us and around us, our aura, our energy field. And when we are living with our pets, we do merge. So we often become one, especially if our pets are really close to us and they have that real special bond with us. We start to feel them. Like, I have felt some of my pets and thought it was my stuff, and I'm like, oh no, actually it's not. Like I used to feel Puss's hip pain and think it was mine. And so sometimes I had to kind of go, is this mine? And try and work that out. But yes, they absolutely do mirror our personality a lot. It's sometimes a bit more tricky when you've got a multi-household, because if you've got, say, one pet, they might be picking up on just one person, or they might be mirroring each different person in the household or a couple of people. So sometimes it can be quite a mixed bag. But like I'm saying to you earlier, wasn't I? There was a fair I went to once, and there was a gentleman there who, I had my people and pet therapy stand, and he came along and he said, whatever you do, don't get a Dalmatian. They're so stubborn and they really like everything their own way. And he was quite harsh, I think, with regards to his poor little dog. And he had his wife with him, and I just turned around very deadpan and just said, oh, well, that's really interesting, but they do mirror us quite a lot. So who in the household can be quite stubborn and likes their own way? And he said, don't know, not sure. And the wife was standing next to him kind of going, kind of thing. And he just wandered off, and I was like, oh, okay, there's going to be an argument at the food table tonight, dinner table. And I've had that with things like ADHD as well, where somebody will say, it's like my dog's got ADHD or my cats have got ADHD. And my first question straight away is, who in the household has got ADHD? Undiagnosed or diagnosed, who has it? And again, people kind of go, oh my God, that's really interesting. So they can mirror us in personality. They can actually mirror us in our values as well. So that could be quite interesting in terms of the traits they show us. They can actually mirror our love languages. So if any of you or yourself have heard of like the love languages by Gary Chapman, often pets will have their own love languages, and they will be like Pussy's was quality time. She liked time with me. My top one is quality time as well. So it can be very interesting how they will mirror love languages, both in communication when they're talking, but also in just the reality in the physical world with us. So they can definitely be mirrors, but they can also be messengers. So sometimes that's perhaps more things like behaviour. So it could be that they act in a certain way where we're like, oh my God, and we fear judgment, or we fear what people think, or something along those lines. They're kind of sort of flag up our fears and things that we need to heal. And there was another one I thought of and it's gone out of my head, but I'm sure Spirit will bring it back. But the other one, for instance, is very, very often I say to people, what you dislike in your pet is what you dislike in yourself. And very often that's the same as what you dislike in another person is what you dislike in yourself. So if people say, oh God, my pet is just so needy and clingy, it's like that is a trait that you do not like within yourself. And a lot of people won't always recognize that. They'll kind of go, but I'm not clingy and needy. And sometimes even just them saying that, I'm like, oh, that's very defensive. And often, sometimes when we get quite defensive, there's shame underneath that.
Yeah.
So again, when we look at the deeper layers, it's like, well, that's very interesting because your reaction to what I've just shared says that there is definitely something underneath that, currently you feel ashamed about. And shame is a very deep, low vibrational emotion. So people often do defend in that regard, when there is shame sort of flying around. So they will, be messengers in that way. Even pets that have passed away, very often they will pass in a way that will trigger previous losses. So something that people haven't dealt with, or could not say hadn't, but maybe they couldn't deal with it at that moment in time.
Yeah, so it kind of brings it up to be dealt with. Yeah.
Exactly. And they might pass in a certain way that will trigger that. I've had people where they got very upset because they weren't able to be with their pet. So they felt like they'd abandoned their pet. And when we started looking into this, it was like, okay, why is this resonating with me so much? What's making that occur? And it was basically that they had their own abandonment issues. So they knew what it felt like to be abandoned. And therefore they felt very guilty and, shamed, if you like, for not being able to be there for their pet. So quite often it's like, again, they will give us this message. It's showing us what we need to heal. I said to people, when Puss, my cat, passed in March 25, this gets slightly weirder now, but she was Phoebe. She was the soul of Phoebe. And I really stand by that. And I don't know too much about reincarnation, but I know it can happen. I know it exists. I know it's possible because they are a soul. They can then obviously step into another body and come back.
Yeah.
And Phoebe passed in 2016. Puss I got in 2020 through a charity. They actually asked me if I would foster her, and she was 4. So that made absolute sense. And before I got her, I had looked after various other cats. And when they said they wanted me to look after her, I kept calling her Phoebe before I'd even got her. And even throughout her stay with me, I kept every so often calling her Fibs, Phoebe, and all the rest of it. And then on the kind of in the just nearing up to the days that she was going to pass, that ramped up again. And I kept calling her Phoebe and Fibs, and actually to the point that even when she did pass, my brother was speaking to my mum and he called her Phoebe. So there was all this like validation and confirmation, and I might get a bit emotional here, but I that was one of the things that I spoke to her about, because I was very lucky that the vet surgery that I was with allowed me to go in and be with her in the kennels. They allow me to sort of spend the time with her because we knew that we'd have to put her to sleep. And one of the things I said to her is, this is what's going to happen, darling. This is what we've both got to get to terms with. And I just said to her, you do understand that you are part of my soul tribe. I said, because I know that you are the soul of my previous cat, Phoebe. And that means that we will meet again in this life. I truly believe that. And I said, so this isn't the end. I said, it's just, we've got to temporarily separate from each other. And that's basically what I said to her, and said, it's going to be really hard, and I don't want to do it, and you don't want to do it. I said, but we've got to be really brave and let go of each other for the minute. And it was very emotional. I mean, I wear my heart on my sleeve. So, it was very tough, I think, even for the vet involved, to be honest, because I literally do wear my emotions so much. But it was beautiful and sacred to be able to share that with her.
Yeah.
And be able to say to her, do you have any questions? Is there anything you want to ask me about what's going to happen? I explained it to her, and even when they said, do you feel that you're ready? I said, I will ask her. It's her journey, not mine. And I said to her, are you ready? And she said, yes. We went into a consult room, and I said to them, can we have 10 minutes just to get her settled and, just accustomed? And having her, she was trying to get up and like wander around the room and, what's this and what's that? And I said, you can't, darling. Because by that point she'd lost the use of her back legs. So it was very traumatic, for both of us. And, again, when he came in and said, do you feel that you're ready? I said, I will ask her. And I said, are you ready, darling? And before I'd even finished the question, she said yes. So that helped me feel that she knew that her body couldn't, wasn't working for her anymore. And sadly, that is needed to exist in this world. So when it actually happened, I had a friend with me who's a spiritual minister, and she was amazing throughout that. And what she shared with me was that actually when they started the injection, as soon as they started to put their thumb on the syringe, she left. So she said, I saw her leave. And she said, you telling her what you did, that actually she's part of your soul tribe and you will be reunited and we will see each other again, made it easier for her to leave, because she knew that this wasn't the end. And I mean, that broke me, but at the same stage, obviously, it also made me not happy. That's not the right word, but it consoled me and comforted me that actually what I'd shared with her really helped her to let go. And I mean, obviously I've seen her since, I see her in peripheral vision and I talk to her. So it's slightly different to perhaps if someone else obviously has a pet that's passed. But I felt very lucky to be an animal communicator at that point and be able to actually ask her, what do you want right now? What do you need? And do you have questions? Because that doesn't always happen. So it was a very emotive time, but again, there was so much that I have taken from that, to the point that there will be a book that we are creating based on everything around, not just around that, but around bereavement, basically. And as I said to other people, the thing is that my grief was very intense, and some people around me didn't understand that, because they said, but you've only had her 5 years. And I said to her, but I haven't. I've had her 5 years as the incarnation of Puss, but I've also had her for another 16 years as the incarnation of Phoebe. Um, Okay. Yeah. So, one thing I learnt with Puss's passing, for instance, was, a lot of people around me thought that my grief was very intense, because they said, well, you've only had her though for 5 years, really? And I had to say to them, but I haven't. I have known her as the soul of Puss for 5 years, but I have known her for an extra 16 years as the, the incarnation as Phoebe. And I said, it's very likely that I've had past lives with her as well. So I wasn't just grieving a cat that I'd had for 5 years. I was grieving a cat that I had for at least, or a soul, in fact, that I'd known for at least 21 years. So in a way, her passing most likely brought up the previous loss of Phoebe passing away
Yeah, and you're
as
right.
well.
This may go further back than Phoebe. It's who knows how many lives backwards this could go, that your souls have intertwined, whether it's in animal form or not, maybe. I mean, at some point, it could have been a human that existed with you that you were very close to.
Yeah,
Such an incredible concept to think of that. And it's a shame that grief and people that are very open about it and speak openly about it can be sort of told, but it's sort of over now, isn't it? It's done, like almost as if you've got to rush
yeah,
through the process. And I think we're
yeah.
slowly starting to come around to understand that actually grief is a far bigger process than we even realize at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm training to be a grief coach actually for pet loss at this moment in time, and that's one of the things that they talk about in the course, is that the grief that you experience when a pet passes away is not socially recognised. We often get shamed for it. We often get guilt tripped for it. People roll their eyes and like, oh my God, it was just a cat or a dog. Like, get over it. And they don't understand that quite often, the passing of a pet can be more intense, more grief than actually if you lost a human loved one, especially if that's your only companion, if that is your baby. I always used to say, Puss is my love. I will protect her to my death, kind of thing. And so, yeah, she was my love. And absolutely, when she passed, that was a massive, sort of blowout from that. It shook me to my core. And again, I think even the way they passed, because it was very traumatic, it was very sudden, it was a shock. I mean, when she was in the hospital, we weren't even told at that point, because that hadn't been discovered. It wasn't them withholding information, but we didn't know what was going to happen. So at the time, we were told, yes, she's going to need an operation or conservative management, i.e. cage rest. And I remember saying to a friend of mine, I don't understand. It's like I'm grieving, and I don't understand why, because she's not passing. But of course, something within me did know.
Yeah, no,
Something knew what was about to come
yeah,
2 days later. So, again, sometimes there's an aspect of your soul that does know what's coming, absolutely. And therefore, that's why you are starting to grieve. Probably because if I hadn't started to grieve at that point, my God, it would have just been, um, it would have been even more horrific than it actually was. So, so there's a lot that can come as messages from their passing, and I definitely want her to be able to leave a legacy, and I'm in communication with her about that. Obviously, me writing the book is part of that, and that won't involve just the experience I've had with her around bereavement. There is other bereavements, both them actually passing away and actually other ones where I've actually had to hand cats back that I was fostering to their owner, that are still a loss. And, you know, in that, for instance, quite often I remember saying, kind of going, where is all of this love that I used to give them? Where's this going to go? Oh my God. And I remember something saying to me, it needs to go to yourself. Duh. You know, it was
Yeah,
that
it's
kind of
almost
like,
like the
you
animal
need,
version of empty nest syndrome, isn't it? When kids go, you don't really know what to do with yourself. You kind of lost your
yeah, bereft.
purpose.
Yeah. And it is a massive, you know, with bereavement, again, that is a massive, big deal, you know, because we lose an identity. You know, we lose, because you're often known as, like, you know, Pussy's mum, or, you know, Bob's father, or whatever it is. You have an identity, you have a role, you are their caregiver, you are their protector,
Yeah.
you are their advocate. I was definitely Pussy's advocate at the vets, for instance, because ever since I'd got her, somebody around me had said, you know, she'd always had a cruciate issue on her right hind, which is her knee. And the lady around me, who again is very mediumistic, very intuitive, does energy healing, had said it's her hip. And of course, it's very tricky to say to a vet. I've had a, you know, a mediumistic, intuitive friend around me that believes that there's a problem with her hip, and for them to really take that seriously. In all fairness, you know, they're like, yeah, but we're the ones that trained at vet school, and it did take literally until she had the accident that caused her passing for them to actually say, we think this goes further up. And I could feel it when we were in the consult room, you know, I could feel it. And I said, I totally agree with you. It's her hip. And it was only then that they then actually had a look, and she had hip dysplasia. And it's like, well, hip dysplasia potentially obviously would then have knock-on effects with the knees and everything else. And
Yeah.
she had spinal stenosis as well. And of course, that's, you know, they're all kind of in the same sort of space, and arthritis in both legs. So I knew when I had her that she wasn't going to be with me till old bones. I absolutely got that feeling when she got diagnosed with the spinal stenosis. And I knew she already had arthritis, and I knew she had the cruciate issue from the minute I got her. Um, there was just this feeling of dread of, she isn't going to be with me as long as I would like her to be. And sadly, as I say, there was a noise that basically got, she was sleeping, and she got up, you know, in such a shock when the noise happened, that she basically turned and twisted, and that's what tore her cruciate. So,
Oh,
yeah, it was devastating. I knew as soon as I saw her, I just, there was obviously a bit of me that absolutely knew this is really, really serious. And I rushed her straight to the vet. Um, so yeah, it was very traumatic for both of us. But again, you know, I've sort of said to her, well, you know, what can I share as your legacy? And again, you know, if it hadn't been for her passing, I also wouldn't have been able to move where I've moved now, because they have a dog, and I wouldn't have been able to have her here with obviously a dog present as well, because bless her, she does like to chase cats. So, you know, and that's no disrespect to that dog. So again, you kind of go, there was a reason why she passed when she did. Um, and, you know, she's been around, she does still communicate. I've seen her in my new place, sort of in the bedroom, hopping around. So she's still here. She curls up on the bed with me. So again, you know, they do stay with you after they pass. And again, you know, a lot of people think that they're crazy. I have that a lot if I work with people that have lost their pets. Like, you'll think I'm crazy is quite a common phrase I get. You know, you'll think I'm crazy, but I thought I heard them, I thought I saw them. And I just say to them, no, I don't think you're crazy, actually.
yeah.
And I think you need to start believing yourself. I mean, unless somebody has a mental health issue, like, you know, psychosis or something along those lines, um, you know, they are seeing or hearing them. I felt when Phoebe passed away, so not Puss, but when Phoebe passed away, I was literally sitting up in my bedroom at 4 o'clock in the morning because I was just so upset and I couldn't stop sobbing. And I felt this, and she used to brush her head, or, you know, the side of her face on my bedside lamp, and it would make that noise. And it stopped me in my tracks. And I sat there for a minute thinking, well, what was that? And I thought, well, did I brush the duvet on the lamp? And I was trying other noises and, trying to work it out. And I went, it's not, it's her. She's done that. She's shown me that she's around. And that was the start of my experience of actually they will, they will show you. I've seen, a lot of cats begin with P that I've looked after actually. So Panda, um, when he passed, I saw him, going up and down my hallway, and just sort of plodding into the bedroom and back again, and Puss. I remember going outside at one point. I had like a little porchway where it was still within the house, and I could have the front door open. And I had got so I suppose intense emotions that it was at that point where I was kind of slightly going into sort of an anxiety attack. And when she'd first passed, and it was on the Friday, so it was only about 3 days after, and I went and sat in the porchway with my front door open. And once I'd sort of, calmed that down a little bit, I then came back in, and then something said to me, oh, did I shut the front door? Because you're not sort of totally with it at that moment in time. And I turned round, then turned back again. And as I turned back again, I saw her sitting on the dining table. And of course, straight away I turned back again and she wasn't there. Yeah. But I know that I saw her. I know that was her saying, I'm okay. I'm all right. And with Phoebe, I've seen her, I met with her in my dreams. In fact, actually last night, so there's probably no coincidence on that one, she was in a dream last night with me, my tabby and white. And I managed to, she'd gone to one of the vets that used to work in vet referrals with us in the dream, and she'd escaped. I'd managed to get hold of her, and I was holding her, and I could feel her fur and hear her purr, and it was so real that you just come back, and I trust that, and I trust and go that it was real because it was real. It felt real because it was real. We have that ability in our dreams to connect with that soul in a way that when you come back, you just go, oh my God, that truly happened. And I suppose that's, I know we're really focusing on pet bereavement, but, that's something I want to work with people on, to allow them to understand that we can reconnect with them energetically. Absolutely, we have to grieve their physical loss. And I still am with Puss. I still miss, sort of cuddling her and stroking her and having her presence here and her little, her little traits and quirks and personality. I miss that 100%. I miss her. And you do have to grieve that physical loss. But when you can reconnect with them energetically, it does help. It does comfort. It does reassure you. And for you to have that ability to do so is beautiful. When you can still feel them, especially like I felt her. So she used to love being on the bed back to back with me, and I have felt that. And I've had other clients as well that have said I felt them sitting on the bed with me, lying on the bed with me. So again, it's when that kind of experience happens for people, it's so visible that often they will doubt it because we're sort of taught to, doubt that kind of connection. Yeah. And that if you can't see it, then it just doesn't exist. Which, of course, these days is just when you're on the spiritual path, it's like, well, that's not true. Sorry, actually, just because we think something doesn't exist doesn't mean it does.
No,
Or does, sorry,
absolutely.
does.
And
does.
everything is connected as well. So time is it's a construct that we've kind of added here, that things like source and spirit and animals and souls and all of this sort of stuff has got no clue about time and concept and money and targets. It's not looking at any of that sort of stuff. So the fact that you and other people have experienced your past pets curling up on the bed in the manner that only they did, to them, there is no time. They are just doing what they used to do with you, whereas us, all that time has passed, and it feels like we have to explain it to ourselves, doesn't it? To explain it to our logical brain where that is coming from, because basically we immediately go to, it's a ghost, and it's not necessarily. It might just be time.
Yeah. And the things is they don't just I've had it where an owner, her pet had pancreatitis, and often when they get pancreatitis, they fart quite a lot, and it can be quite smelly because of that. And I got that smell when I was communicating with him. I got that smell, and I said in my head to him, "Could you share that with your mum? Because that will be a really distinct, unique way of telling her that you're around." And I then said to her, "Okay, well, he shared something with me." And I said, "Is there anything you're noticing right now?" So I didn't say to her, "Can you smell anything?" Because at the end of the day, that is going to be leading someone to then go, "Oh, yes, I can," and whatever. So I just said, "Are you noticing anything right now?" And she said, "Oh my goodness, I can smell his farts." I said, "Oh, that's amazing." I said, "I'll ask him to share that with you. That's lovely. I'm pleased he shared that with you." And yeah, so we could, again, they will sometimes use that sort of sense of humor in a way to bring a bit of upliftment, to their person, to their owner. Um, and again, sometimes Spirit have just guided me to just say sometimes it's also not just about a pet passing, but actually also when a beloved owner passes. So say you've got a mum and dad, and dad passes. Um, because I'm a medium, then we can combine mediumship and animal communication. So if that pet is struggling, and probably the owner is struggling as well, very often I see it, if you've got a grieving pet, you've got a grieving owner. If you've got an anxious pet, you've got an anxious owner, and so on. Then we have sort of like a three-way conversation
Yeah.
where we can bring the owner through for the pet. I can then communicate with the pet with the animal communication, and they can reconnect energetically. And again, that could be beautiful. And then you can work with mum, with obviously bringing, as such dad through, but her partner, and, give messages in that regard. So again, it can be kind of trifold as well, that it's not always that a pet passes. It can be that a human loved one has passed for that pet, or it can be that another pet has passed. I've had that before where there was a dog that lost her sibling, her brother. And she, as the dog, obviously, she was very bereft, and she was just barking at everything and everyone, and was very distressed. And for that one, I didn't use animal communication, actually. I did use canine hypnotherapy, and we brought the sibling sort of closer, and they could reconnect in that way. And it was so lovely to see her. You could physically see her releasing emotions as we were taking her through this sort of visualization as such.
Wow.
Um, and it was, again, that was a real privilege to do that, because she changed after that. I said, because the owner said, "Oh, I've got the bin lorry coming today, so it'll be really interesting to see what happens." And she said she didn't bark. And I was like, that's amazing. That is so good. I'm so pleased that it has helped her sort of have closure to a point. But I did say to her as well, I said to the dog, at any point, if you need your brother to draw close, you just ask him. Ask him to draw closer to you, and he will.
Yeah.
He can do that. The same as actually when Puss passed, and again, I feel like this is needing to be shared because I put it in my head, is when they pass, all limitations cease to exist. In terms of when I went to the local crematorium and just sat in their peaceful gardens, because I just needed a quiet space to just kind of process what I was going through emotionally. She was there with me. She sat next to me on the bench and was like, "This is amazing. I can be with you now, wherever you are." So she was sort of seeing it in a more positive light than I was, obviously, at that point. Um, but it was just so lovely to see her. She was not, sorry, she wasn't on the bench. She was actually on the ground, on the grass. But I could literally, I was getting that impression and that strong feeling of her just sitting there and just watching. And that is what she would do. That was her. And it was a lovely feeling, because I thought, goodness me, you're right. You can
Yeah.
come with me anywhere and everywhere now.
Yeah, literally be
Whereas
anywhere.
obviously in a physical life,
Yeah.
she couldn't. So again, if people have experienced that and thought that their pet was with them, or thought that they heard them or felt them or saw them, don't discount that. Don't doubt it, because they have the ability to show you that they exist. They have the ability to create sound. I've had people that have had horses where they've heard the horse, I was going to say barking, that's a bit odd, isn't it? Where they've
It'd
heard
be
the horse.
strange if it did.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where that came from, but the horse whinnying, or just doing that kind of that they do, or they felt them on their shoulder like they used to do and things, and they've actually felt the heaviness. And I said to them, don't doubt that. That is them saying, I'm still here. I'm still with you. You haven't lost me. And it can be very powerful, you know, and I appreciate for some people, this has probably been quite an emotional episode, even just hearing what they've heard. But, you know, it can be very powerful, sometimes more powerful than what they're here to show us in their living life, in a way. But they are definitely part of the collective consciousness. They are our mirrors. They are our messengers. They show us so much. I've had one dog where they kept doing that on the back door constantly. And the owner would open the back door and they wouldn't want to go out, and they'd shut the back door and be doing that again. And it turned out, when I did a session, I was starting to do animal communication, and basically it turned out that the owner had a lot of emotion suppressed within her. And then there was something that the pet said, and I can't remember what it was, but the person said, oh my God, you know, it's as if nothing I ever do is good enough. And straight away I went, okay, if I said to you, who in your life made you feel like nothing you ever did was good enough? And straight away they went, my mum. And I went, okay, this is what we need to work with. That's why they've brought this up. So that can happen as well. I've had a cat that said she felt trapped, and the owner just went off on one, you know, up like a rocket, you know, everything I do for them. And, you know, and I was like, oh, that was an interesting reaction. And of course, me being me, I was like, right, they're mirrors, they're messengers. So I said, okay, I'm going to just let you breathe for a minute. I want you to just close your eyes, and I'm going to ask you a question. And I want you to just think about this question. And I just said, where do you feel trapped in your own life? And she reeled off all of these, you know, well, this has happened and that's happened. And I do totally feel trapped and da. And I said, that's what they're trying to show you. So sometimes it's the communication that they will use certain words, or they say a certain phrase, and they're meant to do that because of then what's going to occur from that. So it can get very complicated and very deep. And it'll even be to the story that they're honestly reeling off things now, even to the point where if you've got two pets in the household, often one will reflect one owner and one will reflect the other. And sometimes it's like if the dogs are having a go at each other, or the cats are having a go at each other, again, sometimes it's because they are mirroring the fact that the owners at that moment in time are cross with each other, or they had an argument before I came in, or they're resentful, or there's something kicking off. And I've even had to say that in to vet surgeries when I've done talks, and said, if a veterinary nurse or anyone within the team has an argument, you know, excuse my language, but sort that crap out before you get the pet out of their kennel, because they will pick up on it. And, you know, dogs have the biggest heart per body mass, so they're exceedingly likely to pick up on it. So it might be that dog growls at the vet, and they're thinking, oh gosh, okay, we're going to have to muzzle them and that kind of thing. Oh, it's gone very echoey. You experiencing that?
This one.
Okay, it's come back now. So, oh, it's very strange.
My side, don't worry too much, because I can cut this bit out, but I also use an audio, I suppose like a magic audio, where it just sort of filters all the crap out. So I might be able to get rid of the echo if you can cope with it on yours. It can sometimes be distracting if it's feeding back, but yeah, if you can cope with it, I would start that again from the vets arguing. Yeah, if vets argue.
Okay, so I'll do the. So it's the same as I actually, when I do talks for vet surgeries, I say to them, if any member of your team that's working together, you know, a vet or nurse and a nurse or whoever, have had an argument, sort that crap out before you get the pet out of the kennel. And like, especially dogs have the biggest heart per body mass. They are going to pick up on it. And so sometimes what will happen is they'll get the dog out, pop them on the, you know, the treatment table, and the dog will growl at the vet. And of course they'll think it's the dog's issue. And it's like, it's not you know, I mean, yes, sometimes of course it will be, and it'll be that pet feeling unsafe and saying, no, I don't like this or whatever. But sometimes it will be the fact that they're picking up on whoever is angry at that vet or whatever emotion it is. Um, and they're kind of taking that emotion on and they're grounding it out. They're saying, I'm picking up on this, you know, they're really cross with you and I'm going to kind of show you that by
Yeah.
growling.
Yeah.
So I always say to people, you know, resolve that stuff before you get that pet out of the kennel. However you have to do it, because they will pick up on it and they will feel either very awkward around it because they'll pick up on the emotions and understand that, and they will act accordingly. Um, or as I say, they will show it in their behaviour towards one of those people. Normally, if somebody is got an emotion towards the other one, which is the
Yeah.
intense
Slightly the
emotion, then it will
more
be that way
standoffish,
inclined. Yeah.
aggressive one. Yeah.
Yeah. So if a
Mm.
nurse was angry with the vet, then the behaviour will be directed at the vet, the vocalization. So so I even say it to them as well, that they will pick up on that. And it does happen in households, as I say, with multi-pets. I've even had it where there was a gentleman that I worked with who had two pets, and one of them would show the more kind of the dominant side of them. One would show the more submissive side. So one would show the more sort of the more masculine energy, and one would show the more feminine energy of that person, you know. And it was so interesting to notice that. And I was like, oh my goodness, I hadn't clocked that before, you know. So when we were working with sessions, you know, that came up. I've even had it where there was another gentleman around me who used to get migraines, and they'd basically said to me, my cat keeps having seizures. And I said to them, okay, you know, I'll try and communicate with them, but obviously with physical conditions, we have to be a bit careful with that. I'm not a vet. I don't diagnose and so on. I still say to people, you obviously need to see your vet. But I said, I'm really happy to communicate and just see what I get, because I have communicated with a dog before with seizures, to find out what they need in that moment. And they shared a lot of different things about what they needed and what they were going through. And it was very interesting to see it through their own eyes. And with this cat, what happened was, they basically gave me the feeling of having the headache. And I actually then said to this person, when you get the migraine, do they have a seizure not long after that? And boom, correlation.
Yeah.
And you can get something called migralepsy, where a migraine can trigger epilepsy in a person. And I kind of think of it along the energetic lines of illness, when we're talking about the energetics of illness and the energy under a condition, that, well, why wouldn't that be the same in pets? You know, that actually a migraine in an owner can create potentially, and that doesn't mean that everybody that has migraines, that your pet's going to have seizures. So please do not think that, everything is unique in this world as to how it corresponds. But you do get that. I've had a dog where the dog had an issue with their left shoulder. And because of me knowing about the mirrors and that they can take on our energy and our ailments, or the energy of our ailments, I said to her, do you have a problem with your left shoulder? And she said, no, I don't. Should I have a problem with my right shoulder? She said, but now you say that, the doctor did say it was referred from my left. And I was like, boom. So that can happen. And I noticed that with Phoebe. So Phoebe's legacy was that. The metaphysics of conditions, because when she was in her last week, she had a UTI, and something in me, that was it. I had a UTI myself. And because it was like, I knew I had 1 week left with her, I was like, I'm not going to the doctors. I'll just sort it out myself and do the holistic side of things. And I did. But then something went, isn't that weird that she has one and I have one? And then, of course, I started thinking back and going, oh crap, that's happened before. And of course, then I started thinking, like, can they take energy from us? And then I had a lady around me who came to see me for herself, nothing to do with pets. And she said, I know you work with animals. Can I ask you a question? And I said, of course you can. And she said, I think my pet took an illness from somebody. And I said, okay. And I thought, well, I'm not going to, give away what I was already thinking, but it was a bit of a coincidence that I'd been thinking that, and then suddenly I get presented with this client, and spirit will often do things like that. You know, you have a
Yeah,
thought
it's
or an
like
idea, and like,
magnetic,
is that
isn't it?
true?
Yeah.
Exactly. And she said, and I said, okay, well, tell me a little bit more. And she said, well, my dog was a pet therapy dog, and they used to regularly see a little girl. And I said, okay. And I said, well, you know, what was up with this little girl? You know, why did he go and see her? And she said, well, she had stomach cancer. And I said, oh, bless her, okay. And I said, and what did your dog pass with? And she said, stomach cancer. And I'm getting goosebumps again, and I always get goosebumps. And goosebumps normally means truth. And I said to her, are you getting goosebumps? And she said, yes, I am. Now, I can't produce goosebumps in somebody. I was getting goosebumps when she said it. And I said, all I can say to you is that in the spiritual life, you know, goosebumps, unless it's like a breeze or something like that, you know, I said, goosebumps normally says we're saying something of truth, and something within the universe is saying to us,
It's
this is
true.
truth.
Yeah.
And I said to her, so I can't prove it to you. I can't guarantee you. I said, but for me, I'm getting the validation from the goosebumps. And I said, you know, you've got to think of it in terms of they have unconditional love. They have, you know, we have soul contracts. People can look up Robert Schwartz, A Soul's Gift and The Soul's Plan. He's got books on soul contracts. And pets are in the Soul's Gift book. And I said to her, you don't know what that little girl is going to go on to do. She might become the next prime minister, the next eco warrior. She might be, and she might patent something that is life changing
Yeah.
for people. I said, so them taking that, you know, taking some of that, all of that, whatever it will have been,
Yeah.
that energy of that condition, I said, is the unconditional love, the detachment. They, you know, they have that level of detachment with unconditional love, that's what their soul contract was. I take that, and then they can go on to do what they do. And I also did have it with somebody else, who, it was a lady that was pregnant, and she started to get kind of mild stomach pains, and at the same time her dog got admitted with gastroenteritis and sadly passed away. And I never said anything because I didn't think that was appropriate, and it really wouldn't have helped matters. But again, it was, and again, I can't prove it, but something in me said, there's a reason that they did that. And as much as like that owner said, I didn't want him to do that. I didn't want him to leave me. And it's like, I get that, but we also have to see it from that soul contract point of view, that higher perspective, soul level, um, you know, unconditional love, that if that is what they are meant to do and that's their role, then that's what is going to happen.
And that one in
Push yourself.
particular was, it's twofold. That animal either took it for her or for the unborn child that she was pregnant with. Who knows? But either
Yes,
which way, it was done out
exactly.
of pure love, for
Yeah.
one of them or both, you know, like, which is just incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I've even had it with puss. So, basically I'd had a massive argument with somebody, and the day after she got diagnosed with pancreatitis. And when I looked up the metaphysics of pancreatitis, it was absolutely bang on. So again, and I kept saying to her, can you not do that? Please, not take stuff from me in that regard, because I can deal with it easier within me than I can within her. Because some things that I would do to actually remove that energy, release that energy, I wouldn't necessarily be able to do with her. But again, I believe that was her role. You know, I'm not even sure if the spinal stenosis that she had, I kept getting pains at the bottom of my back. And at one point I was like, is she taking this from me, or am I feeling it from her? And I don't know even to this day which that was. Um, so very often they can, again, there can be a physical mirroring, or they can take energy. And I know I'm not the only animal practitioner that works with energy that says that. There is many that have witnessed that and had to try and say to pets and horses and everything out, you know, like, if you continue taking this might be the consequence. But if that's their role in your life, you're not going to be able to stop them. So it's a tough one, tough one.
Um, I find it very, very, very beautiful. I may not have pets now, but I have had many pets over the years, and it just sort of brings me back to that thought of when we speak about people, we sort of come to terms with the fact that not everybody is meant to stick around forever. So it could be for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And I kind of like the concept after listening to you that pets are the same. They can be here
Yeah.
for their entire lifespan, which to them, they've got no concept of that time. So again, just because we put a number to it, it doesn't make sense to them. They're here for a purpose, whatever that purpose
Yeah.
is. And it's absolutely beautiful. And it makes you think, next time you go to choose a pet, are you choosing the pet or has the pet actually chosen you? You know?
Exactly. Absolutely. I mean, I've been like, Push showed me that she's going to come back to me. I was told originally, like, I'd arranged without even knowing it was going to happen, a tarot reading the day after she passed. And you're like, well, something in me therefore knew, way, way ahead of time that that was going to happen. Um, and they said she's going to come back as a white cat. Now, actually, she showed me her coming back as a white and grey cat. And so that's how I sort of feel it's probably going to be. So, but at the moment, she is one of my spirit guides. And she's been amazing. She's been bringing lots of opportunities in for me to cat sit because she knows that I miss having a cat. So, that's come in. I've been able to volunteer at the cat sanctuary. So, even bigger cats. So it's been incredible that I can still have that connection with her and and sort of ask, oh, darling, could I have some more cat sitting opportunities? I'd love that, sweetheart. Um, and she was like that when she was here. If I did spiritual, I used to sometimes do one card readings in my group. And if I had the ironing board up behind me, in my previous place, she would literally come up as soon as I was getting ready, sit and lay down on the ironing board, like, pause out, like, right, okay, I'm ready when you are. And then just as I was getting ready to wrap up, she would sit up, like, okay, we're done now. I can leave. I can continue doing what I was doing. So she was definitely very connected to my spiritual work and to me. There was a massive bond between us, and I was able to ask her a lot of things. I could ask her how watery she wanted her pate when she had traditional Chinese medicine as one of her treatments. I said to her, okay, this is going to taste bitter. It's definitely a bitter herb. These are the ways you can take it. What way would you like to do it? And I thought she'd say syringe it in water, into her mouth. And she said, no, I'll have it in the food. And I thought, I doubted myself, thought, no, definitely not. Because she hates anything that is different in her food. She literally would go, something different in that. I'm not eating that. And yet I put it down the next morning. She ate the lot. And I thought, okay, wow, yeah, so you definitely did say that then, and she could feel the energy. So pets can feel the energy very often if they're very sensitive. I feel like I'm meant to say this. They will know the energy of a medication. Now, I'm not telling people to not take the veterinary medication. Absolutely, I'm saying to people, discuss that with your vet. I did this because I knew Puss well, and I knew what she was showing me. But there was one medication that I wanted to give her, and she fought me tooth and nail, literally to the point that I had scars like that on my leg, that she would not let me give her this tablet. And in the end, because of what it was there for, it wasn't as important really as everything else. It wouldn't have altered anything in terms of the grand scheme of things. And I just thought, you can sense the energy of that medication, and you are saying, I don't need that. I don't want that at all. Because everything else that she had to have, she took. She didn't fight me tooth and nail. And I've had that myself. So again, she's mirroring me. I've had that with certain medications where even if I just think about having to take that medication, I literally be at the point of gagging and retching, and my whole body goes, no, we're not meant to have that in our system. And as I say, please, no one take that into your own hands. Speak to your vet. It was different for me just because of my background of working in vet referrals, of knowing Puss, of knowing what that medication did, and the situation that we were in, the context. So please, please don't do that. Don't stop medications. Speak to your vet. So I do need to put that disclaimer in. But it showed me completely that she could pick up on the energy of that medication and was saying, that's not for me.
Which makes perfect sense. I mean, if everything is energy and everything we feel that energy off of everything around us, all inanimate objects included. then
Yeah.
it stands to reason that something chemical, a medication, would also have its own energy and its own frequency and everything else.
Yeah.
And they are very intuitive and very sensitive, and they do notice things that we just do not see and hear.
Yeah. Well, it's like we were saying earlier, and again, because I don't think we've mentioned this, and obviously Spirit wants us to say this, is, for instance, we were talking about the family I'm living with at the moment. They've got a dog that is very sensitive, and she will sometimes come and sort of pester you to go outside, and she will then get to the front door. You open the front door, she walks out, and she stops and goes and looks at you as if to say, "Are you coming?" And if you go, "No, you go on, you go to the loo, go on, off you go," and she kind of, rolls her eyes and comes back in. And I realised actually it's not because she wants to go out, it's because she's sensing I need to be out there. I need to be in nature. And she's basically guiding you by saying, I'm picking up on your frequency, I'm picking up on your state of being. And I know that right now you need to be outside and in nature and grounding. Um, and they will often do things like that. So if anybody has a pet that, is going to the door and then is like, no, because you're not coming out, and they're sort of looking at you, it may well be that they are saying you need to be out in the garden, you need to be grounding, you're up in your head, or you're scattered, you're anxious. So yeah, I think because we hadn't mentioned that had to be shared, because
Yeah,
it came straight into my
definitely,
head.
because it's a fantastic piece to share, that one. I mean, I think anybody that's had a dog in particular would know the plight of the dog scratching on the door. You open the door and they don't want to go, and you kind of go, I don't understand. What's the problem? Why aren't you going? Go out. Go on. Go, go, go. But yeah, I mean, the sheer thought that they're actually just stood there waiting for you, for your best benefit, your best interests, and you're like ushering them out on their own. It's just mind blowing. But yeah, it fascinated me when you said it the first time, because you can almost replay 1,000 times this has happened, or you've seen it happen when you've been at people's
Yeah.
houses with their own dogs on TV, on films, and you kind of go, oh my God, that's what they're trying to do.
Is and again, it's that's the whole thing. I mean, I know we're coming to a close near enough, but I think again, it's just showing you how amazing they are, how they are art. That's a message to us. That is them saying, I can feel that you need to be grounded, you need to be outside. And they're just showing us all the time with their behaviours, with their personality, anything and everything. It's amazing.
I mean, obviously, a mere hour talking about it doesn't really do it quite the justice that it requires, but it is a fantastic introduction into it. So yeah, it's been wonderful listening to you, and from the outside, people aren't aware of how many times we've actually spoken and tried so hard to get this podcast going, haven't we? So many times
Yeah.
we've been met with absolute, I can't think of the word. I was going to say restriction, but that's not the word.
Obstacles, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
obstacles, absolutely. And Reiki teachers say that obstacles always come up when you're learning something new. When you're about to learn something new, you'll find that obstacles will get in your way to try and see if you're going to push through. And we pushed through, and we got it, and we've
Yeah.
made it
We did it.
happen. We did it. And yeah, I hope that this has landed with some people, whether you have pets, had pets, thinking about it, or want it in the future. I mean, it's all relevant to actually pretty much everybody at some point in their life. And I just want to thank you very much for sharing all of that with us today. It's been really, really lovely to listen to.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And absolutely, I hope that, even just some of those words touch people and, warm their heart, make a difference to them, allow them to see their pets differently. Because everything our pets do is to feel safe. And again, I feel like I'm having to say that because we often label pets' behaviours as, spiteful, naughty,
Yeah.
aggressive, et cetera, et cetera. And if we try and look at it as where are they feeling unsafe, or how does this make them feel safer, it takes away a lot of those labels and those kind of derogatory negative comments that can happen. So yeah, it's been lovely to share it. Spirit has obviously guided the conversation. I've been putting things in my third eye to visualize and tell people. And I'm sure Puss has as well, because we drew her close earlier as well. So she's definitely part of this, which again is lovely for me, because I just think how amazing that she's still doing this with me. And I love her even more for that. Absolutely. I've got a photo of her over there, so I'm just blowing the kids.
Oh, that's really beautiful, and thank you. Yeah, thank you both of you for all the information today. And I have a feeling that I would like to tap back in a little while and do another episode to see kind of where you've got and everything else as well, because obviously it evolves. It all evolves from here, doesn't it? Continuously. So I'd love to tune back in and see what's going on. But if you want to work with Victoria, or if you would like to ask her a question, or if you just want to learn a little bit more about what she does behind it, I will pop all of her details into the episode or into the comments section on YouTube, and you can access her through there. And I'm sure she would absolutely love to chat to any of you. So thank you so much for today, and day ahead. And until next time, to everybody out there, take care of yourselves.
Thank you for having me.